Hello everybody. A number of you have been asking the last few weeks, where you been, man? You've been on this video for a while, so we're going to change that today. And the reason for that is because I've got a few topics that we think we should get across to people. The first thing that we want to cover are all these patches of yellow beans that on clay knolls or on the sides of knolls or in the bottom where water accumulates. We've got a lot of just poor colored yellow beans, stunted beans, and the question is what's going on, and more importantly, can you actually do anything about it to correct it? So if you go into the areas and actually dig up a plant or two, no big surprise, you basically see a soybean plant and a root system that's encased in a bundle of muddy goo. Well, why is that important? Well, I think most of you can appreciate that when you take water and squeeze all the air out of a soil profile, roots are restricted. They don't grow to the degree that they would in a more favorable environment. But more importantly, what happens with respect to the bean plant, these nodules, which you know are bacteria that take into gas from the air and turn that into nitrogen nutrition compounds, nitrates for the most part, that feed the plant. And without air, without the nitrogen N2 gas within the air, the bacteria can't function. They basically just go dormant. So when you see a yellow bean plant, stunted plant, at least in the conditions that we've had recently with the amount of rainfall we've been getting, really what you're looking at is a plant that's starving for N. It's actually nitrogen deficient. Now, the question, of course, well, can we do anything to fix that? Is it worth going in and actually putting a bit of nitrogen, maybe throwing some urea or whatever, even ammonium nitrate, something soluble on top of the ground, and help that plant out? Well, no. Short answer is no. By the time the ground starts to dry and air starts to come back into the soil profile, these same nodules that are suffering right now will suddenly kind of kick back into life, and you'll see those green areas, you'll see those stunted yellow areas suddenly take on a more green, more robust color, because the nodules get working, the roots start to grow a little bit more, they start to pick up the balance of the P and K and micronutrient nutrition that the plant requires, and in concert with the increased activity of the nodules, you'll get recovery in the plant. Of course, if it rains again, the cycle will continue. They're talking about rain maybe later this week, so you get another inch, well, the whole thing's going to bog down and slow it down again. As the ground dries out, the bean plant will recover. And sometimes we can be surprised. These stunted areas that occur in June and July can put on a surprising number of beans just if conditions are favorable in August during pod fill. Now, in direct contrast to those poor spots, sometimes in the same field, there are some gorgeous stands of soys out there, rows well filled in, the height of them up past your knees. Heck, there's even some 30-inch row beans that out there under conventional tillage with some manure underneath them that are rapidly nearing the point where they're filled in. Of course, we all want to grow a stand of beans looks like that at this time of year. That makes us feel so good. Rows and filled in, lush, they're flowering like mad, and life is good for those bean plants. But there's one thing that's coming along that may be a fly in the ointment towards producing that big crop of beans that looks like they're going to produce right now. And that one potential risk when beans are that nice and pretty and that lush is white mold. White mold is a disease organism that infects the flowers of a bean plant. Of course, right now we're flowering like mad. We've got flowers right up to the top of the main stem, just below the last fully developed trifoliate. Pin pods are starting to form at the base of the plant as well. These is the prime infection conditions, prime infection timing for white mold in soybeans. Plant pathologists and disease experts hammer away at agronomists the concept of a disease triangle. Sometimes agronomists and salespeople are a little hard-headed and don't always recognize this triangle and its application. But when it comes to diseases in crops, it's huge. You need the three criteria. for widespread heavy infestation of any disease. You need the host plant. Okay, so we've established we've got a susceptible host, and the susceptible host is also at that magic point when infection is, there's a high probability of the infection to occur. But we need to ask ourselves, how do we know if the disease is actually there? There's a cool app that you can download to your preferred mobile device. You can either download it from your Apple Store or Google Play, and it's called Sporecaster. And what Sporecaster does, it takes your geographic location, which you can input into the app. You check your date. It will use the local environment conditions, local weather conditions, and come up with a forecast as to the risk of white mold infection that we're currently under. And if you run that model today, you can easily see that we're at a risk. We've got the right conditions for white mold to be a significant threat. Okay, we've got two sides of the triangle in place. We've got the susceptible host. We've got confirmation that the disease is going to be present. The third thing that we all need to consider is what's the future environment? What's the future weather? Well, it looks like we're going to continue this pattern of damp, muggy, hot periods of rainfall over the next few weeks. The upshot of that is the soybean canopy is not going to dry out. All that lush growth and all those leaves and fantastic vegetative growth inside that canopy, you're not going to get those flowers drying off. They're going to stay damp. And consequently, white mold is just going to have a party in there on those beans. And the potential of a significant white mold infection is there. And serious white mold can wipe 5, 10, 15 bushel off a crop. It can be a real huge problem. Genetics do play a huge role. There's a couple of reasons that in the past I really have hesitated to talk too much about white mold in this area. One of them is simply Pioneer genetics are good. We've got good tolerance. Our breeders have done a really good job of selecting soybean lines that have a good degree of tolerance to white mold infection. And it's only under the worst of the worst scenarios that you'll have Pioneer genetics that succumb to an economic infestation of white mold. But you need to check with your trusted advisor. You need to check with your seed reps. See if the varieties you're growing actually do have susceptibility. The other thing, we are growing to more clean tillage on soybeans all the time. There's more tillage being used to produce that soybean crop because there's too many corn stalks to be a pain in the ass. More tillage creates the environment where moisture keeps coming up to the surface and allows those mold spores, the fruiting bodies, to really sporulate. So as we've gone to a little more tillage as well in soybeans production, we're creating an environment in addition to the weather and general environment. We're also assisting that in our tillage practices and promoting the actual development of white mold. So I'm going to sound like a bit of a fungicide salesman, but I do believe that you need to consider this year and strongly consider the use of soybean fungicide for the control of white mold. This is the year to look at it and look at it seriously. Well, that's enough for today. And enough things for you to wrap your head around a little bit. So everybody take care. Good luck. Hope the rain stops. The fungicide issue is still going to be first and at the top of our list here as well. Another 10 days we get to the corn crop. So we'll be back at that time. You have a great week and take care. Bye.